Is up, everybody? Mr. Purtis here. Welcome to Unit 5, Part 4 on global migrations. This is 1750 to 1900. The last piece of this, we've talked in this time period about the Enlightenment, the revolutions, political revolutions. Then we talked about the Industrial Revolution. Then from the Industrial Revolution, we went to the countries that tried to reform based on the Industrial Revolution happening in Europe, specifically Western Europe. And then we got into imperialism in Africa, in India, in Southeast Asia. This is the final piece that really connects a lot of this together, which is global migrations. Basically, the idea that people are migrating from their home country to other places and resettling in new areas. We saw this in the last time period, synthesis, where Europeans from 1450 to 1750, as well as Africans who were taken forcibly against their will, left the Afro-Eurasia and went to the Americas. In this time period, we're going to see a different type of migration and much more on a global scale, where we see people leaving all different areas and heading to all different areas. Here's our map just to take a look at it. It's not the best map because it is in a two-dimensional format, and it's a three-dimensional object, which is the globe. So we have Europeans are going to be leaving during this time period and heading to the Americas, as well as to South America. We're also going to see some Europeans leaving and traveling to Australia and New Zealand, specifically British people who are looking to set up settler colonies in Australia. And we see people leaving Europe to Russia and down here to North Africa. The other group is people in South Asia or India are going to be traveling to along the Indian Ocean trade route. Another piece of this synthesis here, as well as Chinese people traveling to the Americas. So here's this in kind of visual form. So from South to Southeast Asia, so the people in this region of South and Southeast Asia, we're going to see about 45 million people leave in the early or late 19th and early 20th century. So really this is going to happen between pretty much 1840-ish all the way through the early 20th century, really till the 1920s. So this kind of carries into this next time period. But from South to Southeast Asia, about 45 million people. Western Russia and all the way across to East Asia, we're going to see about 50 million people moving around. China, about 2.5 million people are going to leave China. Mainly they're going to come to the United States, as well as parts of South America. And then Europeans who leave to the Americas, we're going to see about 60 million of them. About half of that 60 million are going to be coming to the United States. Odds are, if you have ancestors who have been in this country since the mid-1800s or late 1800s, whether they're Irish or Italian, even into the early 1900s, they are going to be part of this group. So it's quite possible your ancestors are part of this group. We have about 30 million people. So here's the deal with this. What is going to cause this migration to happen? What are the factors? There's two things. We talk about the push factor, what pushes people out of countries, and the pull factor, what brings people into countries. So a couple things that are pushing people out of their country. One, we have population increase. Remember, from the previous time period, we have new food sources coming into certain places in Afro-Eurasia, which leads to a population increase. For a lot of places, this population increase is causing industrialization to happen or attempts at industrialization. But one issue is that some people can't find jobs. There's a lot of unemployed people with this factory system, which we talked about in class. As a result of this, people are going to leave looking for better opportunities in other countries. Also, we have better transportation from the Industrial Revolution, so people can travel easier around the globe, whether it's from the steamship, whether it's just better communication and knowing that there's opportunity somewhere else from telegraph lines, and that message is sent to your country so you know that there's better opportunity or are led to believe there's better opportunity, so you might leave. Also, there's a lot of political unrest going on. With these revolutions, the political revolutions early in this time period, there's a lot of changes that are going on. Also, there's really this anti-Jewish feeling in Russia, for example, and parts of Western Europe, where we have these pogroms, these intentional communities set up to pretty much persecute Jewish people. So there's a lot of people who want to flee that, and other countries offer better opportunities and possibly less discrimination if you leave. Fourth one is famine, specifically in Ireland. There's what's called the Irish potato famine. So in Ireland, the British who had colonized Ireland, it's still a place of tension today. The Irish basically have the potato, which potato is a staple crop in Ireland at this point, is pretty much the potato is stolen by the British to help feed their population. So a lot of people in Ireland are starving. So because of this Irish potato famine, a lot of Irish people are going to leave mainly to the United States. We also have issues of famine in South Asia, India, and East Asia, specifically China. So people are starving, so they think, if I go somewhere else, I have a better opportunity for myself, maybe my family, maybe the younger kids are going to go who are in their late teens, early 20s. And the last one is lack of employment, and that kind of comes back to this population increase. So all of these are connected. Basically, you're hungry, you're being persecuted, and you have better opportunities somewhere else to eat and get employment. So that's going to push people out of countries. There's also the pull factors. What countries are trying to pull people in? One, we have some places that have industrialized. So we have increased urbanization. Many of this urbanization, when people move to a new city or move to a new town, they basically set up what we call ethnic enclaves, little areas or little sections of cities that revolve around a certain group of people. In New York City, I like to think of like Chinatown is a good example. If you go down to Chinatown, that is mainly made up of people who are of Chinese descent. So in many places around the world, we're going to see these ethnic enclaves that are really set up specifically. Basically, what happens is one person moves from China, goes there, their family members or cousins come over, they move in that area, and then more people from China come, and they know that there are people who speak, eat, talk, act like them, and it kind of becomes this little community. Little Italy is set up in Manhattan. There's also Little Italy in the Bronx, and these areas are going to be ethnic enclaves. We don't just see it in the United States, we see it in other places as well. Also, there's farmland. A lot of areas haven't been fully opened up. This is the time period in the United States, for example, where there's this westward expansion and there's all this open land, land that's going to be taken from Native Americans, and the United States government wants to farm it. We see the same thing in other places. In India, for example, we have bad example, we have like Australia, where they have new farmland that's going to be opened up. They want encourage people to move there. Also, we see economic opportunities. Obviously, coming back to the last, you're suffering, you're unemployed. There's new opportunities in these places. Also, a lot of these places are promising political and religious freedom where you might not have it in your home country. For example, China or South Asia. And then this new area promises that religious freedom and political freedom. And that is enticing to people. And lastly, this is kind of the key to this, and I see this a lot on AP exams, the abolition of slavery. Slavery has ended by the mid-1800s around most countries in the world, but those countries need access to cheap labor. As a result, a lot of these places are going to encourage what is called indentured servitude. And indentured servitude is really the idea that for example, you're from India, someone is going to promise you access to land in the Americas, whether it is in the Caribbean, where we used to have slavery, which is now outlawed, or in the Americas, in North America or South America. So someone is going to say, this is how indentured servitude works. You will work for a landowner for 5 years. We'll pay you. We will give you housing. We'll give you food. And then you'll work for us for 5 years. After that 5 years is up, we'll give you your freedom. And mainly we're going to see this from British India. And again, this is the result of the end of slavery because landowners don't have any slaves for free labor anymore, so we want to encourage more people to come. A lot of times people in British India down here are going to be tricked. They're going to be told, you come here, we'll give you 5 years, it'll be great, you'll pay off your debt, but we're going to treat you well, everything will be fine. And then they get there and it's really almost like slave conditions. Long hours, 15-hour days working in the fields, no political freedoms. You don't have the ability to kind of sue your employer if they're being treated unfairly. And a lot of times if you try and escape this and you're caught, your indentured servitude goes up. So it starts at 5 years, and if you try and escape this because you realize the conditions were horrible and you were lied to, they'll up it to 10 years. So now you got to stay for another 5 years, and you're basically bound to this land by almost like serfdom in a sense that you're bound to this. So this is all the result of the end of slavery. Some people in China are promised to come to specifically the United States to help build the railroads. Same idea. And when they get here, in the United States at least, they're told you can come here, but they lied to them. They just say you can't stay when it's all said and done. You have to go back to China. So this is the indentured servitude. It's not a nice system. It's really going to last until the early 1900s. But we see this huge migration of people from South Asia and from China traveling all over. Also, the effects of all this. So all this migration of people, there's going to be this change in demographics. Really, it's going to be promoted by Europeans, and it's going to be promoted in imperialized countries. So we're going to see a lot, for example, in British India, a lot in China, these areas that took over. So we're going to see these changes in demographics. Also, these imperialized countries, South Asia, Southeast Asia, coast areas in Africa, are going to be encouraged to start growing one crop. That one crop could be rubber in the Congo. It could be cotton in South Asia. So we're going to encourage one crop, which is going to be bad later on. So these are called single crop economies, where all the farmland is being done for cotton, which means that there's not enough food, which is going to lead to famine, which is going to lead to more people migrating. Number two is there's going to be a large number of males who are going to migrate. They are going to leave women in these countries, their wives, back home. These women are going to have to take over male positions. So they're going to have to be in charge of the home, in charge of maybe a local small business. So we're going to see women kind of shift into these positions back at home as we see the unequal balance of male versus female. So that's the demographic changes. Also, in these countries where migrants are coming to, and remember, business owners are encouraging these migrants to come. Some governments are encouraging these migrants to come. We see a lot of prejudice. This is really a kind of a continuity into today, a little synthesis, but we see some personal displays of prejudice where people individually act discriminatory towards certain groups of people. A lot of working class people are upset that, for example, in the United States, Chinese are coming in and taking their good jobs. We have people in some areas in the Caribbean and Americas who are upset that the Indian people from South Asia are taking over their jobs. So we see this anger towards certain groups of people. And then we also see it as a form of government legal restrictions as well. So, for example, there's the White Australia policy in Australia, where they are only going to encourage people of European descent to come to Australia. Remember, social Darwinism is going on at this time. So only white people can come in. If you're from India, we don't encourage you and don't allow you to come into Australia because you're not white. Also, we're going to see the Chinese Exclusion Act of 1882. You may have talked about this in the past in your U.S. history classes. The United States in 1882, after having encouraged Chinese people to come as indentured servants and to come to work on the railroads for 30 plus years, finally they say the U.S. government passes a law that bans all Chinese people. If you are of Chinese descent, we will not let you into our country. It's not seen as one of the positive times in American history. It's one of those times where we discriminate against a specific group of people, not allowing them to emigrate to the United States. It is a bad time, and it's really a time of very big discrimination against the Chinese. And really one of the things, there's a lot of fear that is promoted by the U.S. government against Chinese people, saying that they're all opium smokers, you can't trust them, they commit crimes, and we can't let them into our country. They don't speak our language, they don't act like us, so we have to keep them out. So that's the Chinese Exclusion Act of 1882. So two main things, again, we're going to see a change in demographics, and again, demographics just means the population. We also see resentment against migrants. All of these things, this whole migrant thing, all connects back to the revolutions, to the Industrial Revolution, to imperialism. So this is kind of the nice, neat way that we kind of put a bow on this. We tie it all together here with this migration of people. That's what I got. As always, any questions, let me know, but that really wraps up the 1750 to 1900. The AP exam loves asking questions on this, so this is a good thing to kind of go back to and make sure you fully understand it. But as always, write down questions, let me know. Thanks for watching.